The Beast TV. Pitch black, deep in the woods. A scream rattles the core of your chest. You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Good goobly goo, Larry Porst II. I see you're still dodging that corona.
Man, I'm so sick of that stuff. About half my coworkers have took off because of that COVID deal because they can get paid while they're off. And so I got to pick up their slack. And you know, I've worked there long enough, they should be picking up my slack.
Yeah. Well, I know you hate not being able to take naps.
Yeah, that's rough. I'm too old not to take a nap.
Well, folks, we've had a few problems with Hangouts freezing up on us, but it seems to be doing better. So we will just get through this the best we can, and hopefully we won't have any problems. But I'm excited. I love to talk about LBL. Our friend Mike McSwain is in the chat room with us, so everybody say hi to Mike. And Larry, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Man, tonight we have the man, the myth, the legend, Bama Murdock, with his cohort Moose in the house with us. Bama, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I am corona free. How are y'all guys?
We're doing
and
good.
gals? Great.
We're doing.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We're doing fantastic, and we're really excited to have you on. Of course, you already know that LBL is our home research area, and we love talking about LBL, and you've probably spent as much time up there as I have. I know you've been going up there longer than me.
I don't know about but yeah, a culmination, me and my buddy both, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I've spent a lot of time up there. Just a beautiful, natural, diverse place that if you go in there and do it right, it makes you feel small when you go in there. You see different species of birds and stuff, and you hear different things that you know you're not used to. And you know, we'll talk about that in a minute because I'm originally from Alabama, so there's lots of stuff up there I wasn't used to. But it's just so beautiful up there.
Well,
beautiful.
I tell you what, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and give us some background about where you grew up, along with your family life, any non-Bigfoot hobbies that you might have, or anything else that our audience might find interesting about you.
Well, I'm originally from Alabama, born and raised there, same house, grew up in it till I left, and very rural. Our little Church of Christ was maybe half a mile up the road, so you were in there 3 days a week, 3 times a week, and you know, I think we kind of grew up poor, but we didn't know it. But we had you know, we were the type that my dad took pride in having a big garden, and you know, and we had our freezer was full of stuff, and we hunted and we fished. And I tell people, you know, when you talk about hunting and fishing, I go, we kind of did it as kids because we were hungry sometimes. And, so you could go literally just walk across the road in front of my house and turkey hunt, squirrel hunt, deer hunt. It's kind of a little coal mining community there, and cotton, a lot of cotton raised there. And I know that Dan on here, he's a crop duster, and as kids we would go out in the yard and they would fly over and dust the cotton fields there in front of the house. I always tell people maybe that's what's wrong with me, is from standing out there, breathing pesticides for years. But no, it was a beautiful place to grow up, and we were the house where all the orphaned animals ended up. There's lots of logging around there too, so sometimes people may cut down a big tree and there's a bunch of baby raccoons in it, and so you take them over to our house. And so we've bottle raised raccoons and deer, and we've had things like crows and groundhogs that especially that crow, he was the biggest thief that we ever had. He just stole everything around the house. But it was kind of like that. And I know I'm speaking kind of generically because there's a lot of people that are raised like this, but we hunted on the way to school, and we ran trap lines before school, and oddly enough, in this day and age, we had guns in our gun racks at school, and we walked around with buck hunting knives on our belts, up and down the halls. It's just, it's a different time now. So, but anyway, I somehow managed. I was horrible at sports, Larry. I just want to tell you that. Basketball is the only sport that I ever quit. Somehow I was captain of the football team. Now, this is a tiny, tiny school that I went to. We graduated, I think, 28. And those are kids you started out in kindergarten with, and you went all the way through the 12th grade with. And but I got into music. If you're raised in a church where you sing a cappella, you can't help but you're made to sing. And I kind of got into that, and I worked my way into a few little scholarships. And long story short, I went to college on some music type things, and got a college degree, which was interesting because that made me to where I lived in a very rural environment for years and years and years. I did get a degree in psychology, and that got me a career that spanned a little over 20 years. And I stopped doing that in 2010 to work for a friend. But back during that time, this is what I wanted to add in here, is I was a dog handler for years. All different kinds of service dogs, and that was kind of, I guess it was kind of my niche from growing up in the country with always having dogs and stuff. So I did that for a big part of a career, and that's where I met a friend of mine. And this guy, I probably met him back in 1989, and we worked together up until maybe about 2009. So we worked together every day, been through lots of things together, and he was a big bow hunter. And he never really talked about it that much at work, but that's kind of what leads me into how I ended up going to LBL, was going with him. That's how I ended up going up there, and had never heard of the place. That's the thing I tell people about it, is it's kind of like a hidden gem. And the way he always talked about it, he talked about it like it was a sanctuary he would go to, during divorces or something like that. That's where he would go to hide. But anyway, he was quite a bit older than me, and that's what kind of got me. I had a good country upbringing. I think a good dad that was a military dad. So very structured, and that's just the way my mind works. So handling dogs was good for me because it's extremely structured, and it was just, I had a lot of good times doing it, and I've got a lot of dogs' ashes in the box over here in the house that
So it was pretty much second nature for you to go into that occupation.
Well, I always told people, and I mean, this is the truth. I was horrible at math, and we grew up in a little small country school system, and maybe the education system wasn't the best at that time. They never really expected us to leave and go anywhere or to further our education. So I realized when I did work my way into college that, gosh, I just really didn't have the book smarts that most of the people I was going to college with did. So I had to kind of get my way through there to get a degree. And then when I started doing the job that I did, I used to tell people, well, I think I was kind of made for that type of manual, because it's kind of like manual type labor. It's like any other job. Once you get into it, you're good at what you do. Once you get outside of that, maybe you're not that great at stuff, but it helped me a lot, and it was just, I met a lot of good friends. I helped a lot of people, and after a while in any job, it's just time to get out of it after a while.
I understand that. I'm still waiting to get out of mine. Well, at least we know from the psychology degree why you're so amused by Mark and I. We're case studies, right?
Oh, that's pretty funny.
All right, Bama. Tell us how your Bigfoot curiosity began and what you did to get involved in it.
I've watched lots of podcasts or things like that, and they talk to people that have had encounters or stuff. Here's one thing that's always puzzled me. When they start their story, they always say, well, I'd never heard of Bigfoot before. I'd never even heard it. I cannot see how you cannot know what Bigfoot is after 1967. You had to have seen an image of it. You had to have seen the famous, Patty silhouette. You had to have seen that. And as a kid, I can remember really, really early. Now, this is early for me. I'm talking maybe 1974-ish or 5 or somewhere in there. And I remember my dad taking me to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to a movie theater.
Roll Tide.
We had to drive probably 60 miles to go to a movie theater or a hospital or anything like that. And he took me to see some Bigfoot movie, and I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't The Legend of Bog Creek. It wasn't any one of the famous ones. I think it was more like one of those movies where Bigfoot attacks everybody, and it's more like a monster type movie. But I remember he took me back to that movie maybe 2-3 times. And so like any kid, I was kind of into it for a little while. And then, cars come along, you get hand-me-down vehicles, and you got little girlfriends. And you just kind of lose track of it. And so I never really thought about it until, of course, some shows and things started coming on television. There's always been shows about stuff like that, and I've always watched that just because I'm interested, not because I necessarily thought that one was out there or not. Because in the original Patty film, I specifically remember my Christian dad telling me, that's a guy that's in a suit. And when your dad tells you something, you believe it. So I kind of held on to that all these years till a few shows came on, and until we made it to LBL, and that's really what got me started on it again, because I was looking for a way to get that puzzle piece to fit into my brain just right, because that's the way it works.
Right.
How long have you been going to LBL before you had what you believe is your first encounter?
Now, my buddy, he had already been going there, Mark, for maybe 15 years. And this is kind of relevant to the story. He had already been going there about 15 years, and the particular place that he and I camped together was not his original spot. His original spot was across a bay, and we would have these conversations every time we camped there. He would talk about how they had intentionally went. Now the road would get rutted out, and you would get stuck going over there. So I can kind of understand it. But they had made it to where the road would be impassable. They had gone in there and dumped loads of dump truck loads down through there to make huge humps. So it's eventually overgrown. So he had been going there for years, and then this particular camping spot where I started going with him is maybe, I guess he'd been staying at that one maybe 12 years. And he's always had some type of this is kind of important too. He's always had some type of a camper, like a truck on top camper, the ones where you sleep over the cab. And but he's probably hired, and because he was out about 2 years before me, and I saw his number in my phone just going through it in 2010, so I called him. And long story short, I went over to visit him at his house. He stuck a compound bow in my hand for the first time, and I was kind of hooked on that. There was just something I liked about it, and then he invited me to go to LBL. So I think my first visit up there was maybe, I actually have dates written down, was in maybe 2010 is the first time I went up there to this spot. And we've always camped at this single spot, only except one time. It's always been this spot.
Tell us about the first time that something happened to you there.
Well, I want to say this. Gosh, if you listen to this show, you have to be familiar with LBL. But there's some people on here that really know LBL. I mean, they know it like the back of their hand. I only know very few spots. But for people that are listening that haven't really been to that area, I always describe it as this kind of like if you look in a science book and you see a picture of an amoeba and you turn it up on its end and then you draw a road through the middle of it. Well, that's what LBL looks like. And there's water on each side, and there's all kinds of fingers that come into those areas. And so I followed him up there the first time, and the road that leads up the middle of the LBL is called the Trace. So I followed him and followed him and followed him, and eventually we turned off onto a dirt road, and we went out that dirt road forever. And later on, now I keep intricate directions to it now, of course, if I ever want to give anybody directions to it. But we go out that a dirt road for about 8 miles. And you don't get to see really beautiful old growth forests like you do at LBL in many places. And he had never told me about all the old cemeteries and all the old homesteads that were there. And for people there's lots of y'all listening that could probably tell me exactly how many cemeteries are there, but that's one of the first things I noticed. So I started kind of looking into that. We went way out a dirt road and turned off onto a little cemetery road. Now these cemeteries, people keep these cemeteries decorated, a lot of them. And occasionally you even go back in there and there'll be somebody new buried in one of these little old cemeteries. And we drove way back down a cemetery road. And as we passed it, the road gets really bad. And it's always been bad. And I'm telling you that kind of for a reason in a few minutes. And you keep following that road down, it will run right into the water. This is where our campsite's at. And I think that probably used to be an old boat ramp, or people would put boats in. But it's so shallow that you can't back your vehicle in there now. But this campsite, when you drive through these woods and past the cemetery and you get down to it, it's kind of like all woods on your left. I'm kind of trying to paint you a picture of this. It's all woods on your left, and the campsite is like a rectangle shape that goes off to your right, surrounded by, I think, what used to be maybe some fields or something like that, because it's grown up in a lot of bramble and a lot of briars and stuff like that. It's my buddy's campsite, so he always gets to park underneath the 2 big oak trees there, so he's got shade and stuff. And me, I'm a tent camper, and I always would stick mine up at the far. I'm a light sleeper, so I'll stick my tent up at a far corner or something, so I won't hear nobody snoring or anything. That's why anytime anybody goes out with you, Larry, and Mark, I'm always like, did y'all bring I hope they brought earplugs with them. So that's kind of where we would set up our camp like that every single time. And the whole time was spent, we had a little John boat that we'd put a little trolling motor on and a battery. And we'd putter around out there and set out jugs and fish and just, and during hunting season, which was the real reason that we would go up there a lot, we had certain places that we would walk to from camp, usually in opposite directions from each other. And it was only then, when I first started hunting there, that I realized that there was another cemetery right close to this campsite. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea as to how it is down in there. Well, long about maybe, let me see, I've got some dates written down here. Maybe about March of 2014. That's when I decided that, well, I'm going to get me another dog, because we've been bow hunting a lot, and anybody that bow hunts knows you have to track a lot of deer bow hunt, and you have to track blood trails and stuff like that. And can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I thought, I'm going to get him to track a blood trail and maybe just something to do. So I went to 2 or 3 different places and ended up with this dog that I named Moose. And he's a feist, which is they're bred for squirrel hunting. Some of you probably have feist or a variation of this type of dog. All country folks have this kind of dog, it seems like. So I messed around with him, started taking him there at maybe 6 months old. And, just to kind of brush over it, he's ended up being very exceptional. And I was always taught that the dog, I love the dog. I've loved all the ones I've handled, but they're a tool.
Yeah.
And, they're given jobs to do. When I see dogs on television working, I always think, even in our modern age, they use such a primitive thing to do certain jobs. There's certain things that just can't be beat. So I started training him and taking him there. I'd probably had him there maybe a couple of years or so. And among other places. So one night, I think we had been there maybe 2 nights to begin with. And this is in March of 2016. And the only reason I know these dates is because I'd kind of taken a few pictures that y'all probably can see. I think Mark's putting them up there. And I'd taken some pictures then. Well, it was nighttime. That's the way all these stories start, isn't it? It was nighttime. It was nighttime, and we were sitting around the fire.
And then we ran for the trucks.
That
That's
has
how
happened.
they end.
After somebody yells, "We're all gonna die!"
That's right.
Yeah, I'm the type of person, I always build a fire. I like to have a fire. I feel secure with a fire. It gives me something to look at. But my buddy, he's the type of person that he's told me, and I've seen him several times. He'll sit out with just a headlamp on in a chair in the dark and read a book or something. But me, I always like to have a fire. So I had us a good fire going. And of course, you know, where you sit around the fire depends on the way the smoke's going. So we were sitting and we had our back to this bay, and the fire's in front of us, and his camper's to the right. My tent's off in front of me at an angle to the left in the corner, right at the edge of this briar thicket. And Moose is in his own camping chair, which he has. Because at night, if you don't give him his own chair, that booger wants to pile up in your lap with you. So I'll fix him his own chair, and I put him in it, and I always leave his ears sticking out. Even when he's in the tent, even if it's cold and we're camping, I'll wrap him up, but I'll leave his ears sticking out because he has some huge parabolic ears. And we're just sitting there kind of doing our normal chit-chatting about stuff. And sometimes we're not talking about. And when I described this to Mark, he said, "Oh, so it was a yes, a kasploosh." Those are the ways I described it. If you've been to LBL and you camp on the water, there's always stuff splashing and jumping and screaming, and just the wildlife's always doing something. But you get used to that. I mean, you get used to certain splashes. And so we're sitting there, and when this first splash came, I literally said the words, "Big splash," like that. And I looked to the right, and my buddy was sitting on my right, and he didn't say anything. He's a little older than me. He doesn't hear great, but he hears okay. And he didn't say anything. So we went back to just sitting there. Maybe about 90 seconds went by. And then the second one came. And I hadn't stopped really thinking about the first one because it just didn't fit into my brain as to what in the world's making this big splashing noise. Because we've been here so many times, and I'm already starting to think of things in my head when the second splash comes. Well, that time the dog sticks his head out and he starts looking that way, and I thought, oh, okay, because he's really good about, I always tell people, if his head goes up and he's smelling the air, there's something. If he makes a noise, then he can see something, and if he gets out of his chair and barks, you need to get moving or get to doing something. So he was into step one at this. Maybe a minute and a third rock came. Third big, I'm not saying a rock, I'm saying a big splash came. By this time I'm thinking, what in the world's going on here? And I told my buddy, I said, "Man, can't you hear?" Huge being thrown. I use those words, something being thrown into the water. Now, his first thing to say was, some of them Asian carp, they're up in LBL. And I said, "Dude, it's not one of those Asian carp." Well, I had a spotlight because we would jug fish out there, and we would shine a spotlight and we could see our jugs. So I eased and I got that spotlight. And Moose already got down out of his chair, and he's kind of easing over that way. And I thought, I'm just going to walk down the end of this old boat ramp. And the way this is set up, the water kind of goes up into little inlets and little fingers up in there. So, if you're walking the bank, you're walking 3 times as far as you would as if you're just walking in a straight line. So it's kind of off over a little inlet over there. So my thinking was, I thought I'm going to take my spotlight down there, and then when the next splash comes, I'm at least going to shine the light. How far away it is from the bank. As I'm walking over there, that's when the next splash comes. But I'm saying that this is probably taking place maybe, 60, 70 yards away. And when I tell people that, they're like, you can hear a splash that far. Well, I haven't told many people, but the couple I've told, I go, this is a straight shot across water. The sound carries across there. Y'all know how nothing stops it. I thought, so I had something, whatever was doing it or whatever I was hearing was in a direct line of sound from me. That's what I was trying to tell him. That splash happened as I'm easing my way down there to the end. Well, my buddy's got up and he's heading for the camper because it's 10:30ish, 11 o'clock at night. So he's in there clanging and clanging around. And I thought, well, that might be good because maybe I can kind of ease down there a little closer while he's, making all this racket. So I eased on down there and I got right to the end, and there's a little bit of stuff growing up there, and I kind of squatted it down and I was looking, and there's if it's a nearby town or something, but when the cloud covers just right, you can almost walk around without a flashlight sometimes.
Yeah.
So there was enough ambient light to where I could kind of even see the bank over on the other side. And that's when the last splash came. And I say the last splash because when that one came, I threw up that spotlight, and this wasn't like a big million candle power type deal, but I threw up this little spotlight. And it had been so warm during the day and it was cool at night that there was about this much fog on that water completely. And when I threw that spotlight up, I couldn't see any waves. I couldn't see anything for the fog. Now when I said that, it gave me chill bumps because I don't know why when I shine the spotlight, I don't know why. That's when I kind of got a little concerned. For some reason, can't nobody come in there on us in a boat, without us seeing them. Nobody's certainly going to come down the road and walk in on us. So I'm going through all this stuff in my mind. My buddy's already climbed up in his camper. So I go back over to my chair, and Moose is messing around. I go make him get back in the chair and cover him up, leave his dang ears stuck out. And, but man, he just keeps looking over there and looking over there. Well, eventually I start hearing something. Now I told Mark this was kind of funny. I start hearing something, kind of a scuffling or scurrying noise. And I just thought, well, whatever it is, you have to think about where my mind is at this point. I don't know what it is. I'm not thinking about anything. All I know is there's something seemingly throwing big rocks in the water. Bigfoot's not anywhere on my radar. I'm not thinking about anything like that. 4 or 5 armadillo. And I told Mark, I said, I don't know why Mark and Larry, I got the idea that something was herding these armadillos through the woods. It was almost like it was almost like they were just kind of moving through there. Eventually, I went on to bed. I'm a light sleeper, and a lot of times I'll take an extra. Eventually, I just had to put a pillow over my head. Because every little noise I was hearing, especially in that little thicket, and I thought, I'm going to figure out what this is. And I will tell you the list of things that I thought about when I was thinking, maybe it's a big hedge apple tree. And the hedge, if any of y'all know what a hedge apple is, those things are big around as a grapefruit and they're as hard as a rock, literally. And I thought maybe there's a hedge apple tree over there. Maybe it's a predatory fish that, like we've caught gar there before. Maybe there's a gar running some fish up into the shallows. And I'm going through all this. Maybe those armadillos were leaping off of a bank somewhere into the water. And incidentally, through all this, I learned that they can walk on the bottom of a pond or walk on the bottom of, a creek across there. But that's what led me. As soon as I got home, I don't know if this was a huge mistake or not, but I simply typed into the computer I actually think I Googled the words, what throws legs? I mean, that's what a generalized thing I typed in. And that opens up a huge Pandora's box full of some crazy stuff. If you're dealing with land between the lakes and you're dealing with lots of stories and stuff, some that Larry may agree with or not agree with. But I sifted through so many. The thing is when I got to kind of looking and researching, I thought, this is kind of fun. I'm looking through it. If you're raised like I am, there's lots of things that the only way that you can get them to fit into your brain is if they maybe agree with your religion or the way you were brought up. So to speak, religiously, and this can't be. So it kind of wore off after a while. This can't be this, and this can't be that. So eventually, I just kind of explained it away to myself as, well, it was something. I don't know what was doing it, and that's the end of that. Well, that starts to bring us to the next time we were there. If anybody has any questions about that first part, please ask me, and I'll go over that. But my buddy got hurt. Like I said, he's a little older, but he's a real active outdoorsman. And, he's had lots of injuries over the years. He got hurt and got laid up a while. And one thing we had always talked about when we're sitting around at night is he would sit there and go, man, if we had us a little pontoon houseboat, he goes, we could sit out there in the middle of that bay at night and look at the stars. And, and he was always talking about getting him a little pontoon house. Well, I don't know if he had a few drinks or what had happened, but he somehow got a hold of a small pontoon houseboat. And they delivered that thing up in Kentucky somewhere. And he said, I'm going to bring that thing down. And he goes, and at least once or twice, we're going to stay in that bay where we camp in that little pontoon houseboat. I said, all right. So that was a 2-day journey for him to bring that little bucket of boats, pontoon houseboat down there. Well, I can remember this because I wrote down this date. This was on September the 6th, 2016. I got up early, loaded moose up, and man, off towards LBL we went. And I left early, way before daylight, because I wanted to kind of hang out before he got there. Just kind of, I don't know, walk around and look at some stuff. But I wasn't psyched out. I wasn't thinking anything. I got there a few hours before he did and just kind of messed around, threw a lawn chair out. Maybe I put my little hammock up and was messing around. Well, he showed up, and this is what we decided to do. He had always talked about that other camping spot straight across the way. And I said, why don't I just get my shelter, and I'm just going to take my shelter across the way. And I said, and you can stay in your little pontoon houseboat, which had air conditioning and a little shower and all that stuff. I said, I'll just sleep on the bank over there. Well, when I got over there, I realized that there really wasn't any campsite left. It was just a jungle over there. And there was one spot where the water would wash down, and it had washed rocks down. So there's one little rocky shoal just big enough to put my tent. And I use a little 2-man deal. And so I waded waist deep water from the pontoon, carrying this container over there, and I got my tent set up and everything. And we usually have that little John boat with us, but since he brought that pontoon down from Kentucky, he had a kayak with him. So he said, well, man, while you're setting all that up, I'm going to, kayak around and fish around there as it gets dark. And I said, all right. So I got all my stuff set up, and I came back, and we were like a couple of kids with this beat up old pontoon boat. Came back, and I thought, I'm going to get up on that thing, because if you see the picture that comes up, and I think Mark's showing it, there's one where I took a picture of a double rainbow, and that was taken from our campsite. Well, if you look at that picture that shows those 2 rainbows, the pontoon boat was about under the right rainbow that's on there. Well, he was gone a while, and I climbed up on top and carried me one of those little stumpy boat chairs with the little short legs on it. And you climb up on top of this pontoon, and there's a little rail around it, and there's a little air conditioning unit. So I just set it up there, and then I lugged Moose's butt up there too. And we just got comfortable because we're facing west, Larry. I'm going to look at the sunset. And I mean, the water was like glass. It was smooth. It was just really beautiful, but hot, still kind of warm. But I'm sitting up there, and I guess I'd been up there maybe 30 minutes or so, and it had just gotten to where if you looked up into the woods, it's dark enough to where you couldn't see into the woods. If you're looking across the bay or at the sky, you've got plenty of light. So it just gotten that dark. Moose is up there laying down on a life jacket I laid up there, so it'd be padded because he's spoiled rotten. And I'm sitting, something screamed at me directly behind me up on the hill. Now I'm sitting in that. It wasn't funny at the time. I'm laughing now, but I'm sitting in that little stumpy chair, and the first time it screamed at me, it felt like it just literally washed over the back of my head, and I grabbed the arms of that little stumpy chair. It was almost like if I'd had long hair, it was like standing in front of a speaker with your. Well, that's how hard it hit. I get chill bumps thinking about it. It for a second, and I was kind of like, holy mackerel. I didn't really say that, but I thought, what in the world was that? And maybe, oh goodness, 2 minutes later, it's almost like when you kind of stop thinking about it, or maybe you decide you're going to get up and move. Maybe you're going to go get your phone where you can record something, or, which was downstairs or down the ladder in the boat, by the way. Well, I thought, I'm going to ease up and get my phone, so at least maybe I can record this. Well, that's when a second scream came. Now, this sound, I tell anybody that I've told, it was so loud that it echoed off up into a hollow. There's like a little finger hollow that runs up in there that we've hunted before. And that's that road, the old road that they've made where you can't travel it anymore. And it's an old cemetery road. And it echoed up in there that second time. I didn't hear it do that the first time because I think it just, I don't know. I think it startled me so bad that it gave me tunnel hearing is what I call it, where everything else was closed out. The second time that happened, I mean, then I got to really, hear it from the start to the finish. And I've been around some pretty good vocalists over the years and stuff. And this was loud, and the duration of it. Most people will say, well, I heard this and it was so loud, no human could have done it. Well, I've heard human. Well, the dog had got up by this time. He's always kind of like my barometer sometimes. He had got up and he's turned around, he's looking up there, not making a noise. Try to ease out of this chair, but I can't go down and get something to record because, I guess I can leave him up there. These are the things that I'm thinking about. And I came out of that chair onto the deck kind of like a slinky, like I melted out of that thing slowly down into and I kind of belly crawled around, and there's one of those really small air conditioning units, like on campers and stuff. And I kind of eased around that thing, and I thought, man, I'm going to go over that ladder and go down, get my phone, come back up and see if I can at least record something. Well, about the time I got to the ladder, that's when there was another scream. I think there was a total of 5 screams, and each one of them sounded exactly the same. They started high pitched and stayed high pitched all the way to the end. Well, I thought, I guess I'm stuck up here, and I sat there until maybe it had started getting pretty dark about that time. And when this last scream came, the second that it came off to my, I know how people talk about, I heard this, and then there was a wood knock, and there was this, and this. This is exactly what I heard, and this is the way I describe it. When I heard the last scream off to my left, I heard a rotten tree knock is the way I describe it. I heard it hit the tree and break. And then I heard the thud when it hit the ground. It was that close to me across straight, flat water. And if it had been more light, it would have been obvious that you could have seen it. So if that was something, now I'm thinking, if that is something, I guess it has a direct view of me here. Literally, when that happened, my buddy came around in his kayak around the side, and we have this thing to where we go hooty hoo when we come walking into camp. So he goes hooty hoo like that, and he paddled up, and I said, "Hey man, hand me my phone out of there." And he said, "All right." So he goes in, hands me the phone, goes back in, starts up the generator on this rattle trap. So there's no more hearing anything. I'm not going to be able to hear anything else. I will say this. After it got dark, we had something to eat, man. I made that wade back across there, that campsite. And he said, man, I'm going to fire up this generator and get this air conditioner going and get it cold in here. He goes, man, why don't you come in here and just throw something in the floor and sleep in here? And man, across there I went. I was back into that pontoon. I did. I slept in that thing on the floor, and I'm not ashamed to say it either. Yeah. So that was kind of the second time. And when the next morning, I went over and tore that tent down, and we went back across to our original spot, and he anchored up maybe 20, 30 yards out there. And we built a fire, and I tent camped there on the bank, and never heard anything. Not a noise, not anything like that. That was on September of 2016, and that was the second time that I did that. Now,
Bama, you don't have to name the location, but is this happening on the Tennessee end or Kentucky end?
This is happening on the Tennessee end.
Okay.
All right. Honestly, and this is the truth, we kind of, man, it bugged me so much, and it got me thinking about stuff that he had told me when we're camping there before, because he'd been here for years. And you remember I told you that he would sit out there sometimes with just a headlamp on and read at night. Well, this is way before any of this happened. Just in a general conversation, we were sitting there by the fire, and a deer blew up in a thicket up above the campsite. Now, this is a thicket that probably was an old homestead between the campsite and a cemetery that sits up there. So there's a big thicket there. And we're sitting there, and I heard a deer blow. And this is kind of pertinent. I said, I think I heard a deer blow up there. Well, he right then said, I was sitting here one night, and something just started tearing the woods up there. And then back then, of course, I didn't think anything about it. And, well, he had actually said that same thing 2 or 3 times. But now I got to thinking about it. Now that I kind of thought that I knew something when I didn't really know anything. So we're sitting there one night and around the fire, and I just said, man, I think I heard a deer blow up there on the hill. And right then he goes into that story again. And he said, man, I was sitting here one night. He said, and something just started tearing the woods up there. Well, I'd already asked him questions about it before, like, do you think it was a couple of bucks fighting, or just, I'm trying to think of anything. And I'm also thinking, how many times can I lead him through this story before he gets wise to me? So I'm thinking, how can I interrogate him, and so sure enough, I said, I think I heard a deer blow up there. And he goes, man, something was tearing the woods up here one night. And I said, what do you mean tearing the woods up? And he goes, well, I don't know, just, break, all kinds of racket. And I said, describe it to me in turn, like, what did it sound like? Even if it has nothing to do with the woods, what did it sound like? And he said, it sounded like somebody was in a vehicle with a motor turned off, and they put it in neutral, and they let it slowly ease through the woods, slowly breaking things. And I said, so it wasn't like really a violent thing? He goes, no, it was crack, 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 crack. He said, I could hear things cracking, and it got closer. Well, I got up out of that chair and went over there to the camper, and he usually carries like a little 380 or something. And he said, I went over there, got that little 380 out of the truck, put a magazine in it, charged it. And I said, you really think that you needed a gun? And of course, now I'm thinking, wow, he's coming out with a 380 of all things. But I said, you really thought I said, what made you think that you needed a gun? And he said, because, he said, as it was getting close, he said, I yelled, get out of here. And he goes, it stopped for a minute. He goes, I don't know, man. He said, I felt safer. Now, he had camped there, I don't know how many times after that, but I thought about that story as it related to all this that was going on. Well, honestly, we kind of had a little falling out, like I said, because I wanted to go camp some other place. And I went all over LBL, and I scouted, new places and places to camp with creeks and, wherever we could go. Well, him being old and stubborn, he didn't want to change camping spots. So we kind of had a little bit of a falling out over it. But what's strange is maybe 5-6 months down the road, I just thought, man, I'm just going to go back up there by myself. Because I told him during our argument, I said, well, man, I've got all the stuff I need. I said, I don't have to go camping with you. I said, I can go camping by myself and it'd be a lot less work. I remember telling him that. So I did. I went back by myself, and when I drove down in there, the water was way down. Now, anybody that goes there or hunts there or fishes there, they can raise the water up and let it down the Corps of Engineers any way they want to, really. And sometimes they drop it way down. And it was way down. I mean, it was, holy mackerel, it was 20-yard beach all around. So, man, the first thing I did was leap out and start looking for tracks and but I wanted to walk up there where I heard the splashes at originally. And I walked over there. I couldn't find any big rocks in the water or anything. Kind of messed around there, maybe 30, 45 minutes. And I went back to the truck, and all my stuff is in those big plastic totes in the back. They're labeled. It's my OCD, I guess. Shelter, cooking. I had pulled out just the shelter and set it on the ground and was about to open that up. And I just got the thought, man, I don't feel like I belong here for some reason. I've got that. And some people have heard me say before, man, when the little man speaks to you, you listen to the little man in your head. And I just had that feeling. And I thought, man, I'll hang out a few minutes and see if I can kind of kick it. But I didn't. And I wasn't psyching myself out, but man, I just couldn't kick it. So I drove to a place that a lot of you might know, Piney Campground, which I'd never been to before, and actually, stayed in a little primitive spot in a campground over there. Well, lo and behold, maybe it was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months later, I just thought, man, I got to go back up there. I thought I'm going to head back up there. And it was a weekend, and it had been raining really hard, and my plan was I'm going to go up on Sunday, and since it's raining, all the people camping, they'll be leaving anyway. From the campgrounds to any primitive sites, they'll be taking off. I thought, so I'll ease up there. So I made that long drive up, and I got stuck on the way in, just past our little cemetery there. And it took me a good, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes to get unstuck out of there. Went back down. There's my same favorite campsite. I got out just like it was normal. I wasn't really thinking about anything except that it was cold and there was a fine mist. I mean, that's when I took that picture with the 2 rainbows in it across the bay. Anything moving. In fact, I went over and flipped over a wooden pallet, and there was a big snake under that pallet, and it was so cold that snake just wouldn't move. I could pick him up and flip him over. So it's pretty cool. I'm saying that because once I got set up, I built a fire, and even though it was mist and rain and cold, and eventually I just got in the tent. But I had moved it over to where he normally puts his truck camper at this time. So I'm kind of in a new spot. And I camp this way anyway, but I'm trying to figure out kind of where to put my truck so I can see the road that comes down into my campsite. And I always park the vehicle where, I'm facing out all the time. That's just something I've done anyway. So the first night, there was no noise. I always pictured it as everything was just hunkered down and had been taking a rain for days and days, and there wasn't anything. So I get up the next morning. I thought, okay, this is going to be great because the sun came up. It's warming up nice, and things are normal, moving around, same noises, same splashes and screams and all this, stuff that goes on at LBL anyway. Well, I got into that second night, and I had me a fire built. There's a camping chair over there, moose piled up in it. And once again, it's around like maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock. And I always say that a lot of people say, well, it got really quiet. I mean, suddenly it just got very quiet. It wasn't like that. Everything was going on pretty normal. And then there was a really loud noise, maybe 60, 70 yards. If I was sitting in front of that campfire where I was looking at an angle, and it was a straight line from me through my tent into the woods to where this noise came from. And this is the way I describe that noise. If you took a big blue plastic barrel like they deliver cooking oil in or something like that, it sounded like somebody had, the top was off of one of those and it was empty and it was on its side and somebody had smacked it with something. It wasn't like a crisp smacking sound. It was a dull noise, and it was extremely loud. It was so loud that the second that it happened, that's when it kind of canceled out all the other noises, and Moose came unglued, came out of his chair, barking and acting all crazy. And I just kind of sat there for a second. I got him back over there, and eventually it's almost like the sounds will close back in on you. Start, hearing all the natural sounds again. And I'm not going to lie, this is the honest truth. And I told Shelly this. I was sitting there for we are leaving in the morning. And I said, and my dog's a sweet little dog, and please don't hurt either one of us, and we're going to bed in a few minutes. And in about 30 minutes or so, I just went off to bed. I don't think I slept much, but I didn't hear a single thing that night. And that's the last time I ever went to that spot. I swore I would never go back unless I had a FLIR or I had something or somebody that would, kind of knew what was going on. But that's the last time I went back to that spot.
I tell you, we have not gotten very many questions. I believe everybody has been like me and Larry and just mesmerized at these stories because we've been there. We know what it's like whenever something that seems very unnatural starts to happen. And I'm going to tell you, Mike McSwain, okay, of course, like what Larry said, we don't want you to give away anything, but was it on the Kentucky Lake side or the Barkley side?
This was on the, if you're looking at a map of LBL, it's over on the right side. So the Cumberland side, what do they call that over there?
Yep.
It's on that side. Mr. McSwain, you say?
Mike McSwain. He was actually the first person that when I got into boogering took me to LBL. Me and a guy named Stacy Black. They both knew it fairly well, and they showed me the ropes. And I give a lot of credit to Mike for taking the time to do that with me, and he's just a lifelong friend.
I tell you, I tell people when you get into this or start looking into it or whatever, you run into a lot of characters. Let's just put it that way. But I always tell people, I go, find a good group that's got honest people and, kind of lurk a little bit to make sure they're not mean and they don't bicker with each other and stuff like that. And those people will lead you over into other people that are good at it. I didn't want to do Facebook, and I don't care much for that kind of stuff, but that's really the only way that you can communicate with stuff like this. And so I look through a lot of folks, and a lot of groups, and a lot of things that I just go, oh man, come on. I mean, this can't be, I found lots of very magical things in there. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
You don't say.
Oh my goodness gracious. But yeah, that's just it. It's like I said, I haven't been back there since. I've kind of, especially during what's going on now, I thought, oh, now would be the perfect time to go up there. And I'm like, my biggest thing is, well, what if I get up there and somebody's already there, which has never happened. It's pretty much that remote. I had one ranger come in on me one time, but it really is. I think I would probably feel pretty comfortable. And I camp a lot in the mountains in North Carolina and Georgia and places like that. Yeah, this place gives me the heebie-jeebies. I won't camp down in there by myself.
Well, what other locations have you been to? You're from Alabama. Have you been down to Bankhead or anywhere like that?
I lived not too terribly far, a little south of the Bankhead Forest. So I think it was during Christmas this year, a little after, I came back and we went into the Bankhead and hiked most of the day. And oh man, that is just, it's unbelievable. It's just beautiful. Sometime if you want to, we'll get into it. But yeah, my little old mom, she's 82 years old, and she married a little widower. He's 84. And they live in paradise in the middle of the woods on the lake, and it's just beautiful. And weird stuff started happening there. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so. But that's a whole different thing. There's, when I was visiting, getting her prepared for the coronavirus, I was kind of like, something's going on down here. But yeah, I camp a lot. I camp a lot in the real mountains. That's what I tell people. It's funny though, because if I mention somebody, I go, well, I camp up at Land Between the Lakes a lot. Even people that have never been there, they know the name of it, but I had never known it till he took me there. It's just an absolutely awesome place.
Yeah.
But I won't go back to my spot again.
Why not?
Well, I got a FLIR, so I always said I wouldn't go back without a FLIR. Because up there at that spot, even using one of these little Scout TKs, which is what Larry turned me on to, these are great just for that little short air and that little short distance in there. But yeah, that has to be like I said, whether it's a mistake or whether you want to or not, if you start Googling stuff about LBL, you'll have all kinds of good stuff come up.
Well, it's kind of, talking about the FLIR, it's kind of like what you were saying about your buddy with that 380. It's just something to keep somebody off the top of you, that you can that you can get them off you if you had to.
Right, and the thing about the FLIR is I watch moose with the FLIR because, when it's dark, I'll hit him with that thing and I can see where he's looking at. I always tell people, I go, if you're ever driving down the road and you see a couple of horses standing over in a field and they're both looking at something, well, then look and see what they're looking. Dark, I'll get the FLIR and I'll try to figure out what he's looking at, because I know he's smelling things. I know that all that kind of stuff's going on, and he's calm. He's not, he's not some wacko or something. He's really been a good companion for some of the places I go, and I do the majority of it by myself now anyway. So.
Well, Larry, do we need to look at any questions? I don't.
Well,
I'm just pulling it up now.
I got my mug for Debbie.
Ray Dowell says he's got to tell us what happened at his mom's house now.
Well, oh, goodness gracious. Do you want me to?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, of course, this last time I was down there for 8 or 9 days, which is kind of odd because I don't stay down there that long. But not too long ago, I was down there by myself. I took a friend down there with me this time to help kind of. My mom will aggravate me to death, so I'll take somebody as a buffer between me and her because I just want to go to the country and relax. But one time when I was down there, I said something to Mom about, well, Mom, the only car you get to see all day is the mailman, because that really is the only vehicle that comes down their road. And she said, yeah. She said, but old Rex came over here the other day. Now, Rex is a guy that I graduated with. And I don't know how I ended up being so scrawny as a kid, because these are some big old country boys down there, and Rex was always a big old huge guy. Well, she said he came to their house about 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, and was banging on their door, which isn't wise to do in the country anyway. And they're both really old. My stepfather, he literally cannot hear if he doesn't have hearing aids in. So it scared them, and of course they went, and there's Rex. And he said, don't y'all hear that banging up there? And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, up there around y'all's old home place, there's something banging on something. Like, it sounds like something banging on something metal. That's what she said he said. And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, Miss Shelba, it's just boom, boom, boom. Can't you hear that? And she goes, no. And of course, it wasn't going on at that time. He even went to the other neighbor. This is how remote they live. She has a neighbor, and she has another neighbor. He even went to the other neighbor's house. And Philip's about, holy mackerel, he's probably about 6'6". You don't mess around his house at night. So this is how something was going on there for Rex to go over there at night. And he said that he had heard something too. He has a bunch of logging equipment out there, trucks, and those big metal fuel tanks to fuel his trucks and skidders and stuff with. Well, of course, I didn't think anything about it. Well, we drive all day to get away from the corona and drive down to Alabama in the rain. And I mean, it rained and rained. A lot of you probably know that there's lots of flooding and stuff. I mean, that was just a few weeks ago. Long about maybe 9:30 at night, I'm sitting out on the front porch with my friend Kel. My mom had already gone to bed, and we're just kind of sitting out there because we don't get to hear the sound of, where Kel lives at and where I live at. We just don't get to hear whippoorwills and lots of things like that, like you do in this. So we're just sitting out there, kind of just enjoying it. And I hear a big tree come down just on the other side of her lake. Now, when I say a big tree, I just heard a crack, crack, boom. It didn't sound like it ran through other limbs on the way down or anything. Well, the first thing she says is this is what she sort of said, but she goes, what in the world was that? And I just made a joke. I said, I'll tell you what that was. I said, there's a booger over there pushing a tree down. And she said that, and I was just kind of joking around. And she goes, and she was dead serious. She says, you need to go get your FLIR. Well, I went and got the FLIR, and of course, I couldn't see anything. Well, I thought about that, and the next morning, I headed up, because I could almost pinpoint exactly where that was, right across that dip. And I'd posted some pictures on our Beast page of that area there. And I could almost figure out exactly where that was. So, man, I was hot-footing it over there early the next morning. And what's weird is I saw a tree, and I thought, that's it. That's the tree right there. Well, it probably wasn't. But it led me to this. I know some of you saw this. It led me to this stick that was stuck down in the ground with the heavy end up. It had been broken off of something, just stuck down in the ground. And I kind of walked over and I looked at that stick. I thought, how odd for that stick. And the ground around that tree that was fallen was kind of beat down. There could have been a bunch of turkeys came scratching through there. It could have been anything. But it was kind of beat down, but there's that stick. And I thought, how odd. And I'm looking to see if I can figure out where the stick fell from. And why would the heavy end be up instead of down if it fell out? So here, this is my mind working again. And I thought, I wonder how deep it is in the ground. Now, Debbie Jones, I thought, I'm going to see how deep this thing is in the ground. But about the time I went to grab it, I thought, man, I wonder if I should pull this out or not. I thought, I don't know if I want to do this. Well, I didn't. But I took some pictures of it. I think I even shot a live video on it. And then I was peer pressured into going back to pull this stick up out of the ground. And I kind of made the joke to Kel. I said, if I pull this out of the ground and something starts throwing sticks or rocks or something screams, because up behind this is kind of a big pine. My stepdad has left all the hardwoods around his house, but other than that, it's kind of surrounded by pine thickets. And I said, if you hear anything going crazy, we got to, get out of here. So anyway, we kind of, looked that over and was kind of messing around with that for a little while. Well, I don't know, maybe, gosh, it had to have been a year or more before that. I was there alone. And I was sitting on the front porch at night. Moose is out there. And he kind of got up and started kind of going around the side of the house. And you know how a dog, when they're trotting, they're kind of like that. And he was growling. I thought, what? No, because he has to see something before he'll start making any noise. And I'm like, brother, what in the world is it? So I ease around the house and something tore off down through the pine thicket there behind the house. And could have been a deer, we could have flagged a deer off there or something, but it was, making a lot of racket down there. Well, after this tree fell, when we're down there visiting Mom, I get up early the next morning, now I'm saying early, I get up about 7 o'clock, but along about 8 o'clock-ish or so, I got my fishing poles and I went down there to the lake. And I told somebody this because when that first tree came down, and I was talking about it, I actually spoke to somebody in our group. I won't mention his name. He knows who he is. Called me and we kind of talked about it a little bit. And I didn't say anything about the second time, but when I was down there fishing that next morning, I was by myself. Everybody was 8. Came down, but it was up behind the pine thicket there where I couldn't see it. This is really sandy ground in here, and I'm not saying that it hadn't rained so much that trees ain't just coming and going, but this is times when there's no wind, nothing going on like that. Nothing else has ever happened, no anything. Just, I've never, and I don't know if Mom would even know if something was going on, probably so. But yeah, that's the kind of little thing, and that's just recently. That's just started up pretty recent. But I've never got an uneasy feeling about it. I've never had the feeling like, oh man, I'm here in bed and something's going to come up and start peeking in the window in a second. Now I do close the shades, but I don't ever get that feeling.
Well, Bama, we've got a couple of questions, and we want to thank Stephen Walton for donating $24.99.
Thank you, Mr. Walton.
Absolutely.
But Mike McSwain, well, I'm glad Mike's on here, by the way. We got to go fishing soon, Mike. But Bama, Rodney asked, what are your thoughts on the beast of LBL? And don't worry about my thoughts. You just go on with your thoughts.
I won't worry about yours. I'll just go on mine. Honestly, that's kind of what I was alluding to when I say if you Google strange occurrences at LBL, that's one of the first things that pops up. And I have read accounts of it, written accounts. I've watched videos of tours of that area. I've seen Coonbo and Bear both do videos there. Oh gosh, I don't. That's kind of one of those things to where, I always said that there's certain things that when you get into it, you have to cross a lot of maybe religious hurdles or moral hurdles or something. And man, that's one thing I just can't wrap my brain around. If there's a thing that basically amounts to a 6 or 7 foot upright walking canine, which I've had experience with, I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm like you, Larry. I don't have anything to do with it.
No.
I don't know if I believe it or not. I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was and we didn't have to encounter it? But just the thought of the things out there like that, it's just exciting.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Somebody asked a question earlier. Did you feel like your encounters were Dogman or Bigfoot at LBL?
I don't think, what, when I think back of the things that happened, all of them were tolerable. I mean, the things that were happening, It never gave me that feeling, that I was talking about. The time that I came back, in the middle of the day, like I said, when the water was down, that's when it gave me that feeling of, man, you don't belong here. I'm not the type of person that goes around and goes, oh, look, there's a tree over there that's broken, that's Bigfoot, or over here's this. It's just, but it's what led me in that direction. I couldn't think of any other explanation. And man, when you start telling that to people, I mean, holy mackerel. But I would think it would, I mean, wouldn't a dog man just come on in and take care of business, especially if I was there by myself? So maybe it was just a Bigfoot.
I have no idea.
It's the lesser of the two evils, I guess. I'll take that one.
Here's a question from Larry Porch. When are we going camping at that spot?
When we had originally planned our meet and greet, that we've had to put off for a while, I had spoken to one person. I said, if you want to, if you want to meet me a couple of days early, I said, I'll go back to that spot. I said, if I've got somebody with me that kind of, knows what's going on, it'd be fine. I would take y'all to that spot. The thing about the spot is that, that's my buddy's hunting spot too. And it's really been a place that's near and dear to him. And, but yeah, I would take some people I trust. I always said I'd put a blindfold on you and put you in the back of the truck, take you out there and then unblindfold you. But yeah, that would be, I would really like to do that sometime.
Well, we prefer to go whenever there's not a hunting season going on anyway, because we don't like getting shot at.
I hear you. Right. Well, see, the thing about down where we're at is it's all bow hunting except for a short period of time. And that's why it appealed to me, because it's just, you're not allowed to put up tree stands, nail things in the trees. So the idea, it's a very natural way to go hunt, and just a great place to go do it at. Yeah. So.
Well, you said earlier in the show that sometimes y'all hunted because you're hungry.
Yes, sir.
There's not a better hunter on the face of the earth than a hungry hunter.
Yeah.
You better believe that. I know. People would laugh. Yeah. People would laugh at me because I would say, Mama, can we have squirrel? And of course, right, most people are like, ooh, they picture the squirrel that's on, on the bird feeder or something out there.
Right.
And I literally would walk across the road and, bring dinner home.
All right, Bama, we've got a question from Kat from Paranormal Heart Podcast.
Yeah.
She asked, have you seen any orbs or UFOs at the same time or metallic smells?
I never have. And when you can't hardly do Bigfoot stuff without hearing about the lights or the orbs or something. I've never seen anything like that there. It's kind of odd because that cemetery where the camp is at, you go through a thicket and then there's kind of a cedar thicket you go through and then there's the cemetery. And it's always kind of neat because the coyotes seem to congregate right up there in that cemetery, which is maybe 300 yards away. And man, they will get up there in a large group and get to cutting up. When I started looking into all this, if you get into deer hunting, you watch deer hunting videos and deer hunting shows, and you learn characteristics and you learn things. And that's really what my goal was to, just kind of learn maybe what I was dealing with.
Okay, Heather has a question.
What is it?
She wants to know, what advice would you give to someone who is going to camp at LBL for the first time?
Uh-oh.
Is this Heather Feather?
Yes.
Heather Feather.
Okay. I want to mention one thing that she had brought up one time. She brought up an interesting question. She said, why is it that you think that y'all camped there for that long and only now something happened? And her main question that she posted was, what was the difference? If there's any difference, what was it? And I got to thinking about it. There was a difference. The first time I went, when this first happened, there had been a burn there. I don't know if it was a controlled burn or whatever, but all of the woods on one side of the cemetery road had burned all the way up to it, and nothing had burned on the other side. So wasn't. And I got to thinking that just any little thing you can come up with to try to figure out that's what I always tell people. No detail is too small. And I thought that was neat that she brought that up. She goes, what is different? And I said, well, there was a fire in there. And suddenly now there's things going on in there. If you were going to go to LBL and camp, I really don't have a choice. I have to camp. I camp a lot by myself because I can kind of take off when I want to and things like that. So I really have an advantage with that. And I'm not going to, kid you. I'm nervous camping by myself. And if I told some people that, they would really think that was funny because I'm not a nervous person, but I don't know. I like having at least a trained dog with me. I'm about to name off all the criteria for the missing 411 things I was telling you about. But I've told people, I camp a lot by myself, and I've told one person that I speak to on here a lot, I booby trap my camp like crazy. I have things that I set up. I have stuff that makes noise, and I have trip wires, and I do all kinds of stuff because I'm really more worried about a person, I think, than I am anything else, more than a bear or anything. And I've laid in that tent before at night and just thought, okay, come on, man. They've told me that these things have walked through their camp, walked around their tents and stuff, and have never bothered them, man. I'll be okay. And man, that's rough. It's rough to lay there when something's walking around the tent, but I don't know. I'd take somebody with me. It's the number one thing. Even if it's just injuries or something happens to you.
Do you take a weapon with you when you go?
I have just been around guns and had to carry guns for so long. That's one reason I got into bow hunting. It's just such a much of a different thing. I usually have something. Now, the thing about LBL is there's certain times when you're allowed to hunt, you're allowed to have certain firearms, you're allowed to do certain things. When I go into LBL, I will stop. I will offload my I usually maybe carry like a handgun. I will offload my handgun and I will put the magazine and the ammunition in one spot and the weapon in another place. But man, when I lay down that tent, I got to have that thing. I mean, I got to have something. I got to have something there.
Kat asked, does he have flares or some form of communication in case of emergency?
This is really funny. Me and Mark were talking about this, how now we rate how remote some place is by whether we can get a cell signal or not. When you can't get a cell signal, you're out there. Well, this spot is there's one spot where I could walk up to the cemetery and send a text. Well, after all this kind of happened, I just didn't want to walk up to the cemetery in the dark, send a text if I needed to or whatever. But I have some little things that I bought online that I'll set up trip lines, and it uses a shotgun primer, which is not even really as loud as a firecracker. And all that is just to, get the dog up and moving, and to get me up and moving. Sometimes I'll set 2 or 3 of those things up, and so I can kind of index where whatever it is in my camp at the time by what's going off or something like that. But no, I don't. I'm trying to be as safe as I can. I don't have any flares or anything like that, but those are some of the things I do.
Had your trip wires been set off anytime you were out there?
I've never had one set off. And I thought at least maybe a bear might set one off when I was in North Carolina, but I've never had one go off. And the one place I kind of will frequent the same camp and spots. And something hollered at us up on the hill up there, but it could have very well just been, a native something in those mountains that I don't understand what it was, but.
Larry, Debbie wants you to tell everybody about your GPS, and we have had to use it before.
Well, we have had to use it, but not to call SOS, thank goodness. I have the satellite GPS that has a SOS button on it, so if some of us get injured, because we do go so remote at times, I don't want to lay there with a broke leg. The bear or mountain lion comes up and finishes me off. So I have that. I can press the button that sends out my location, and they will send search and rescue to that coordinate. Supposed to.
I've even looked at I've even looked at the ones that are less expensive, the little spot ones, because I think that's what really. I've had lots of injuries over the years, and that's probably what I worry about more than anything, because I hike a lot, and I probably worry about a mechanical injury more than I do anything else.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. That's just like, that is in my Amazon basket. It's one of those things, because I specifically wanted one to where I could press the SOS after and this can be later sometime, but after the thing that happened in the Joyce Kilmer National Forest, I was like, man, I want one of those. Because I think that if I'd have had something like that day, and I got that weird feeling, I think I'd have hit the button. I think I'd have been that. Now I may have canceled it, the call in a few minutes, but I think I'd have probably hit the button on that one because I was feeling strange on that one.
Well, the only reason I got it is mainly because of injuries, because it don't take but one wrong step and you got a broke ankle or twisted knee where you can't get out.
Yeah.
Seriously. And you're right. Most people think, oh man, I'll get hurt. I'll just do that. You're absolutely right. Are you going to lay there and have something, a big cat come up on you or something like? I think about that just from hearing y'all talk about things when I'm in the mountains.
Right.
I think about big cats and I think about bears and but I think about things like that way more than I think about Bigfoot.
Me too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But the things that happened to me made it so that I bought a FLIR, and I even installed one of those dash cams in my vehicle because I thought, man, if I ever have a roadside crossing, I know I'm not going to go, oh, let me reach up and hit my camera, so it continuously records. And I thought,
Right.
it'll film it and the crash afterwards.
Larry, I cannot believe that well over an hour and a half has gone by.
I can.
Bama's been doing all the work. All we've been doing is sitting here.
Well, I'm one of the moderators on the show, and there's always lots of questions. So today I was thinking, well, I wonder what questions I'll ask, and but I was trying to be as thorough as I could and kind of get through it as quickly as I could and not leave anything out. So that's probably why we're an hour and a half into it.
Well, I think a lot of us are just hypnotized because of your past occupation, you were able to go into the detail. And it's like what you said, you answered the questions before they had a chance to be asked.
Right.
I'm sure that there has to be somebody on there making some wise cracks or.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, Rick Wales has had to set.
Rick's probably at work.
Oh,
yeah, probably. I haven't seen him on.
At least Spencer's had to said something.
He's waiting on you. We've got a request for you to show your mug where everybody can see it. The one you're drinking out of.
Oh, yes. Yes. Who was Charlie up in Kentucky?
Charlie Raymond?
Yeah, Charlie Raymond first had one of these, and when I told you, they sold out of those in Amazon quickly after he had his on the show. So we had a race to buy these. And Debbie beat me. Yeah.
We've got one more question here, real quick. If I can get my phone open to read it.
Let's see.
Patrick. There you go.
Patrick Noble asked, have you ever camped in West Virginia?
I've never. Appalachian Trail hikers and I mean big time hikers, and I have one of them that I can ask stuff. Have you ever heard anything? You ever seen anything on the Appalachian Trail? And of course they haven't, but yeah, that's some wild.
Well, Larry, I guess we need to start wrapping up. Do you have any questions, Larry, that you would like to ask first?
Well, I asked the main one.
When
are we going?
What's that? Oh, when are we going camping that spot?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that for too long. Seriously.
Well, we don't need to wait till it gets hotter.
Yeah,
I'm fat.
I wanted to mention this before we went. There's a lot going on right now. I hope we've kind of helped people escape from that a little bit. And we also have a few people in our chat room and they'll know who they are, that have had some surgeries lately. And I'm always let's not get too panicked by everything, and let's just try to get on with this.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, Bama, we would like to give you any farewell comments, anything that you would like to talk about before we go off the air, and you just take your time and say anything that you would like to say.
Well, it's been a real treat. Seriously, this has been the first time I've ever told this entire story. Well, I mean, you're a captive audience. I mean, you don't really have a choice, but but this is the first time I've ever told the story, and a lot of you have probably had the same experience, to where, when you hear people talk about, well, I kind of made fun of me, or they ridiculed me, you don't realize what that means until you do start to tell somebody that like a friend, a trusted friend, and they go, man, you ain't heard nothing, you ain't seen, and do it. So this is the one thing I always tell people is, if you find a good group like our group that we're in, y'all guys have always been super willing to help with advice, with, just all kinds of, that's the type of people that you want to get yourself involved with if you get into something like this. And there's a lot of nuts out there. So, but seriously, this is of course, anybody that's watching, I mean, they're already kind of interested in the subject anyway. So, and seriously, I am not, nor will never be, a researcher. I'm a camper and a hiker, and like I say, I'm just a woodland snooper. It's not like I'm not out there looking, but that's just that's just. I always have a problem. People say I don't have a problem. People say researchers. I have that for me, but just get out there and get in the woods. You can't do it sitting on the couch, except for the people that aren't able to go out and do stuff.
And we got
have those. Yes.
And we got a job for them, listening to audio.
That's what I was saying. Even those people contribute with audio and stuff. And when we go camping, they can do a lot of cooking too.
And eating.
Yeah. Hey, hang on here a second. I'm going to grab my sidekick.
Yeah. Make sure you get Moose on here.
Now, listen, he's dead asleep, so ain't no telling what he'll look at when I wake him up. Hang on.
Here comes Moose.
Oh, buddy.
There he is.
What you doing, pal?
Oh,
boy. What you doing, eating bud? Oh, man, there he is.
I don't think he's really excited about being on the
show. Well, he's looking at me going, man, you're old. Aren't you supposed to go to bed about 9 o'clock or 9:30?
Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you listening, and I hope I've been, worth your time.
Oh, it's been great, and we appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience with us.
Yes, sir.
And we can't wait to get to go out and experience something with you.
How about that?
Oh, man. Am I ready for y'all?
Yeah. We're pretty much as is. So.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it.
And we'll feed you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you will. I may be one of the few people that hasn't gained weight since I've been, self quarantined or social distance. But yeah, we'll sure do it.
Well, Larry, do you have any final words?
I don't. Just, again, thank all those frontline people that are in the healthcare industry that are taking on this crazy virus, and to all those essential workers such as myself that are out there just still slaving away making that money. Hang in there. It's going to clear up pretty soon, I hope, and everything will get back to normal.
Yeah. Just tell everybody to be safe. Use common sense when it comes. If somebody's running for the last package of toilet paper, or maybe you scream out something like, "I feel a sneezing attack coming on," or and maybe you'll get it, but don't just try just use common sense.
Yes, please.
And we want to thank Steve Walden for what he did. That was nice, and we don't ever ask for nothing, but it does make us feel good. Got probably one of the best comments that I have ever read yesterday from Patrick Noble, and talking about our show last week with Doug, and we just love Doug, and we're so glad that Patrick enjoyed that show. And just to give a little preview, next week, let's see, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it.
What are you looking for?
Debbie had said something, and I don't see it. But our heart is with audio, and we're going to have a fantastic audio person with David Ellis next week. He works closely with the Olympic Project, so that will definitely, I'm going to be trying to learn everything that I can learn. I'm just a sponge when it comes to these people.
And they'll be talking right over my head the whole time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm just now starting to look at Debbie's thing she put out about how to use Audacity. So I just started looking at all that stuff. Okay. And I'm telling you right now that this, Mr. Schrader last week, it was not easy to follow him. He showed up with foot casts and all kinds of stuff. I show up with a feist dog over here.
We all have our place in the community.
That's right. We're all just a speck. That's what I tell everybody all the time.
That's right.
Well, all right. Beast TV would like to welcome all of our new members on our Facebook page. We have been getting so many people, and it's kept Shelley really busy. And this page was really set up for audio and analyzing audio, but it is involved to more than that. So if you are new and haven't checked out our files tab, there is a wealth of information that you might find beneficial for you. And if you're interested in contributing to the Bigfoot community, we would be thrilled to show you our protocols in analyzing audio and we certainly could use your help. We want to thank all of our new subscribers and our faithful followers. Also, be sure to check out our field evidence videos. And if there's any guests that you would like to see on Beast TV, just put their names in the comments section. And Debbie Jones will jump straight on that. Don't forget to hit the like button. I saw 117 people on at one time, and we've got 61 thumbs up. So hit that thumbs up button for us. And Larry and I would like to thank Debbie and Shelley and all of our moderators, including Bama, for all the behind the scenes work they do. And check out our sister channel. That's Larry's channel, Beast of the Woods. Thanks again to Bama for coming on this week, and we will see you again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night night, footers.
This has been a Sawdust production.